that as part of that. But I also believe it goes even deeper than that. I think, well, in having studied most of what we're discussing and hearing all of your voices, it comes back to two basic thoughts: customs and tradition of each culture. Each culture have their customs and tradition. Imagine if they were to practice those cultures and tradition and to build the economy, to build the things necessary for the people, to serve the people and the needs of the people, there wouldn't be any war. Because people respect each other's customs and traditions. And that would promote goodwill, that would promote an exchange of ideas, promote the opportunity to go into trades with each other, whether it's trading bananas or whatever fruit and whatever there is, in a way that makes sense. When you control the food source and you control the water, you bring anarchy, you bring problems, you bring issues. And people resort back to the only place they can go back, and that is to a warring idea, a thing to fight for something that they think is justified. There's no justification in the things that we see today. Everyone has a right to voice their opinions and their thoughts. My goal today is to get further input from all of you as I construct this letter that will go out into the world as to our views and as myself as king, and what we as a nation feel is necessary to begin the process of healing. There's always a way. I refuse to just sit down and let the world go by and I not be a part of it in a good way. Jessica, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Well, I'm trying to take in all of the valuable input from the previous ministers, and thank you, Ambassador Esson, in particular, for talking about the religious aspect, the belief system that's in place. And I may start out a little negative, but I want to go to the source of what some of the problem is in order to directly attack the source. So if a country perceives that one of their missions is the annihilation of another people, that's a primary, and it should not be a legitimate ethos of a state that the destruction of another people is their primary goal. So I would like to go after that. And what I'm about to say is not holistic. These are just initial ideas. And I know that Dr. Cox has a question, so we'll get to you in a second, Dr. Cox. What's going on with refugees globally, I believe needs a different approach. And it's not just that every country that's not at war, which that number is getting lower and lower daily, needs to accept the refugees and incorporate them into their life. But at some point, these other nations have to be required to become viable. And His Majesty knows that my idea of peace is, well, my motto is peace through righteous action, but beyond that, righteous actions by leaders entails the provision of human rights. And so if we can focus on countries providing human rights and moving in that direction, then peace is more sustainable, and then the people want to stay there, and people will thrive where they are and build peace. I know it doesn't sound very realistic, but those are my initial thoughts, Your Majesty. And Dr. Cox, you have a question?
I just wanted to point out the Kingdom of Hawaii's neutral status during the Crimean War with the Allies. Now, as we all know, during the Crimean War, 1854-1856, Hawaii took a neutral status as an ally to both the United States and the United Kingdom and also the Ottoman Empire against Russia, with the fear of it spilling out to the Pacific Ocean. So when we take that as a good example, our neutral status and peaceful status plays a good role. So we can be an ally to the Western world, but still maintain our peaceful status. Basically hope for peace, but prepare our subjects for the war and have our disaster awareness tackles and things like that in place and in situ, but aim to provide humanitarian and compassionate allyship to our peaceful countries around the world. Turkey, on the other hand, is used to all this for the past 400, 500, 600 years because of logistically where it sits. So we grew up with conflicts all around us at all times. And that is why we do choose to go with the use empowerment, compassion, human rights, and humanitarian drive to try and keep conflicts at bay and to try and encourage youth to find alternative solutions to global problems. Arms trade is one of the biggest money makers for all the Western world. So whatever we do, arms trade they have done so for 700, 800 years, that the history at least shows. It's just how we can maintain our younger generation with peaceful projects is hopefully bring a solution to the crisis around the world, but be prepared with our subjects for the worst to come as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cotton. Thank you, Minister of Foreign Affairs. That's why the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you have good thoughts, Jessica. I appreciate your thoughts. I also appreciate your strength, your conviction to see things come to the proper fruition. Thank you. You know, we can go on all day discussing various ideas and how we should mitigate the situation in the Middle East. It's like going into a school or going into a theater. You've folks heard this analogy before, or a stadium. So there's a bomb here and everybody runs all over without thinking because they're all running out of fear rather than thinking, well, where is the bomb? How can we exit peacefully without killing ourselves? And this is what this is all about. What can we do peacefully and the right way? And because the threat is out there, it is incumbent upon me to prepare for the possibilities, but still working on peace. We still need to prepare for food and water, emergency supplies, and so forth and so on. Regardless of what the media is saying or what intel I receive or what have you, preparation, it's like preparing for an exam somehow. You know, you got to prepare. Well, to me, this is like in life, we need to prepare ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Without proper preparation, when something does happen, everybody the person who has not prepared is lost. We should prepare, we must prepare, and at the same time live our life. Be happy, walk on the beach, enjoy a handshake, enjoy a hug, enjoy a cup of coffee, enjoy a hug from your family. We should be doing all that stuff. We should walk out in the street and say, I'm happy to be alive. How about you guys? These things are very crucial and very important. Getting out of bed and saying to your loved one, you know, I love you. And then when you go to bed, you tell them you love you. Because when you drive off, you don't know what's going to happen. You can get into a darn car accident. No, but it's always wise to think ahead and be present in that moment, and do all that you can to, if nothing else, to bring peace to your mind and body and to your spirit. That is very, very important. But we must prepare in the eventuality. As a big word, I don't know if I can spell that word, but the eventuality all of this happens, we need to be prepared, all of us. And I am preparing for that moment. Event it happens, we have a safe place to be, where we can continue our work and help those in need, help those who are not prepared. It's like in anything. Earlier, the Muslim faith was brought up, and Christianity was brought up, and either one of those are principles that person lives by. Whatever philosophy that a person wants to live by, whether they're Muslims or Christians or Buddhists or Hindu, it's a principle that they live. That's part of their culture, part of their tradition. And I have found that although I may not understand it, I must respect it because it's their culture, their tradition. And that's why we, as the Kingdom of Hawaii, we can exercise the spirit of aloha wherever we go. Because the spirit of aloha welcomes and invites everybody, regardless of one's religious status and educational status or who they are. And all of you are empowered by your spirituality and by your very presence of who you are in representing the Kingdom of Hawaii, representing yourself. That to me is a godly thing to say, regardless of who and where how you learn about who God is. And that's a philosophy for me. There's only but one God. And others, the Muslims, say there's one God. You must respect that and move forward. And in time, who knows? Maybe the answers will come to all of us. But aren't we all just surviving and trying to make sense of our life and trying to make sense of why we're here in this world and whom can we speak to that can be impactful in a good way? I think that's all we have, and that's all we need to do. So I will go ahead and I'll ask one more person the thought as to my agenda here regarding the peace talks versus war and the concept of war. I'm going to ask Pastor Rick Williams his thoughts, please.
Well, I haven't dealt so much on a world stage as this, but I will say that I have been listening carefully to each one. In fact, it's quite exciting to hear the different thoughts and the mindsets of those around the world and how this really affects humanity as a whole. And truth be told, I think we all have a lot of the same thoughts and desires when it comes to what, brother, you were talking about as the spirit of aloha. You know, I did a little reading on that. In fact, I started this quite a few years back, and just the mindset of what it means to have that spirit of aloha and kindness and compassion, both in harmony and I guess with nature and humanity, and then trying to deal with this from an aspect of where we are in this world that we live in. And I've come to the conclusion that, especially one that teaches from the Bible, that Jesus made it clear that in the end, there's going to be wars and rumors of war. And that's a struggle that we live with on the earth because there is such an issue. And I was trying to write down names and such of what, and taking notes. But the reality of, I'm boiling this down to a simple word called pride. And so much pride in people, I think, can also convolute the thought process of what it means to care for one another. Pride, I think, is the root of all evil in that respect. I got to have what I want, and I want it my way, and it becomes to the point where I'm not going to even listen to another thought. And as one that lives in the United States of America, I believe I can say plenty about America and be safe with, because I was born and raised here. But the United States of America as a whole is a nation that's becoming fast lost in what it means to be a good neighbor, what it means to be a nation that at once was a giver, a nation that cared about people. I'm not saying we're completely out of that, but we're kind of lost our way. And some of that has to do with what has been mentioned about traditions and customs. That seems to be words that are being lost in today's culture in the US. We're changing everything, and at times it seems like we just completely lost our minds and what it means to care for one another, be considerate of one another, and be global in our mindset. Realize that when we go into different nations, we're not going to make every nation the United States of America. It should never be that way. In fact, I think it would be kind of boring if the world was all the US. Rather, I celebrate the different cultures. I love what the Creator God created on this earth. I'm actually taking classes at the doctorate level at a school in Africa, because I just wanted to be part of a different culture and learning to understand a different way of life. And it's been exciting and intriguing. So as we just try to simplify this in a mindset that we need to focus not on ourselves, but we need to focus on what the world needs. As for what's happening in the world as it comes to war and issues, this is a big deal. It's a big mindset for me. And without, I guess, being one steeped in prayer and trusting God to be God, there's going to be issues all around this world until people begin to realize a lot what you're talking about here is what it means to be peaceful. I like the idea of the peace center that's been discussed and what it can really mean. And if that message could get out in such a way that it's not threatening, what I mean by that is the war between what would be, you have the Jews and the Muslims. The Muslims could be Christians. This stuff is, to me, it's almost irrelevant when it comes to life and what it means. There are going to be differences, traditions, and customs, Your Majesty, that you spoke about. That's not that there's no evil in what traditions and customs are. It's just an understanding of who people are and their background. That's a big step. I believe that Miss Jessica mentioned some things might be difficult to do in that respect. How to But the Bible tells us that what is impossible for man is possible with God. So our trust needs to be there, and we just continue to expect God to be God. So my thought, simply rounded up, is to understand what God has called us to be as children together in his kingdom, and to care for one another. And oh, by the way, Paul said in Philippians that we're to consider the needs of others over our own. If we could practice that, the world would look different. And that's some of my thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Your Majesty, if I may.
Yes, Dustin. Aloha.
Aloha, Your Majesty. So I think that we have to look for talking points and negotiation points. That's what peace is really about, is how do we get together? How do we come to find a solution? And if we look at war is always about land, recognition, religion, or resources. And those are basically the fundamentals of all war and why war starts. It's not normally because of family differences. It's normally because of resources and money. So what we need to do is not think, because all of us on this phone are very altruistic. So we think from a kind heart. These people do not have kind hearts.
Right.
We need to look at it from a completely different perspective. Why? And what is it that's causing this in the background? And if you stop and look, if you look at the background, if you Google and you look at resources, because almost all wars and proxy wars are done because of resources. You know, the US going into Panama, Venezuela, and all of these nations, it's all about their resources. Everything seems to be coming down to resources. So the real question is what are the natural resources that are in that space, in that area, on that land? And it's very clear, okay? Because there's three things that you'll find. First, they've got the new canal going in. That is a very big moneymaker. That is going to be something of the future that needs to be discussed. And they don't want it, neither side wants to lose that position. Two, rare earth elements have been found throughout that entire area right there. It's very, very rich in rare earth elements, which is worth trillions of dollars. And three, the new natural oil and gas resources that are there are tremendous. Just on that little strip of land, there are enormous amounts of oil and gas that have never been touched. So I think that what we need to do is change the way that we look at it and look at the way that they do. And the way that they look at it is going to be funds and money and profit. And unfortunately, it's human life that pays that toll. So I think that the real negotiation points are actually how can each side work together to exploit those resources and come up with a treaty that those revenues go directly to the people to help the people to solve their nation's issues and not be allowed to go to war, or they lose their portion of those resource commodities. And I think that there is a point that can actually be negotiated and spoken of that actually has meaning and teeth behind the bark.
You're absolutely correct. That is, you're actually summed up what I was about to say, Dustin. Thank you. You did it a lot better than I would. But resources are one of the big issues that we're all facing and why people do the things that they do. That is true. However, there's good and bad. And I'm not that naive to think that we cannot make a difference or even an impact, because I believe we can. And I believe that social media is one of the best resources for us to get out our thoughts, our thinking about peace. It's because the whole world goes through social media a lot. And we have a creative webmaster, I call her. Her name is Kay Robinson. And she has been working on our Kingdom website. I don't know if you folks have gone to the website lately, but she's been doing some very creative things to bring home our thoughts and through art and through putting things in the proper perspective. And media used to be a very good outlet, but unfortunately, they're very selective. The media is selective, and rather than speaking the truth, it's quite different. It's contrary to what the truth is, or partly is true and the rest is not so true. But there's other forms that we as a kingdom can move forward to get our thoughts across. And imagine that tsunami of aloha coming from Hawaii into the rest of the world. Because Hawaii, people know Hawaii, they know the Hawaiian people, and they know that we are a very strong people, but we're also a very giving people, a good people. So imagine that we start that here and moving forward into the rest of the world, where every one of us begin the changing the whole from war to peace, changing the whole thinking. It only starts with, it took 3 people to steal the kingdom of Hawaii. Let me put things in proper perspective. 3 people stole the kingdom of Hawaii. 3, that's it. It wasn't an army. It was 3 people that manipulated the U.S. military. It was 3 of them. It was also 3 people that left their government that they didn't like to form a new government and wrote the Declaration of Independence. Only just a handful of people. Which means that we have, all of us, we have an opportunity to start from here to move forward, to bring about that peace. And we can do that. Thank you, everyone. We need to move on. I thank all of you for all that you said. I need to have our Ali'i Manaʻonui begin his presentation on Imagine. I cut and pasted his thoughts. I hope all of you had an opportunity to read that. Some that he'll talk about is the value system, managing the funds, the Peace Center, so forth and so on. Lanny, please.
Mahalo, Your Majesty. First of all, somehow in the cut and paste, something got lost. So you did not receive everything that I had prepared. But I realized that this morning when I was getting ready for this call. So I will be sending out the same message again with all of the pieces of it once we're beyond this call. And what I wanted to do for this call was to sort of leap ahead and move into what would be the good things that could be done or the critical things that need to be done where we could possibly have any influence. And that last piece, the possibly have any influence, is one of the most difficult pieces because the kingdom is a small entity in a giant where all the elephants are running around and trampling everybody. And we know that that's not the way to go. So I wanted to put forward ideas for what it would look like if we really responded to the current situation. One of the first things we need to do is to have a value system that's a checklist of what anything the kingdom does meets those tests. And we do that with our conversations in these kinds of calls. We identify the critical components of a lasting peace, the critical components of bringing harmony into the human family. And those are things that we can do to the extent that we can do them. In a very practical way, I wanted to also have us look at what are the effects of this great upheaval that's having an impact on so many people. And part of it is that we are in a desert where the water is not available to everybody. And sharing of resources, I love the idea that was just talked about, where we would share the resources among all the people. Everybody would get their fair share, and we would stay in harmony with each other while we did it. And that's a very bold vision. People are selfish and people are focused on their own needs and not those of others. So we have those to overcome. But my thought was, if we can look at what a good outcome would be, that would help to generate at least some energy towards that outcome, where we would know that what we were doing was important enough to have some influence on the global situation. The Peace Center, to me, is the center of the kingdom work, where we have multiple pieces of the Peace Center. I'll focus on one for just a moment, and that's in migration. People are being displaced by the millions around the planet, and there's no central comprehensive plan to deal with this. And without that plan, things happen in a chaotic way. There are those that believe the Syrian situation that was mentioned a while ago, the war in Syria, that what actually happened there is that the global change in the weather resulted in a collapse of the agricultural sector in Syria, and all of the farmers moved into the towns where they used to be out in the countryside. And when they got into the towns, they competed with those who lived there for the jobs and resources, and created a civil war in Syria because of climate change. And I cannot stress enough how distressing it is for me to see people still questioning whether climate change is happening. All you have to do is look out the window. We see the fires, the floods, the famines, all these things that were totally predicted, totally predicted. The book I read about climate change was written in 1984. And it said that there was going to be a buildup of carbon dioxide because we were burning fossil fuels. And that was going to warm the earth and cause chaos in the weather systems. We are already well past some of the tipping points that we mentioned in that book so long ago. And it's important for us to confront people when they don't accept the idea that there is a global change going on in the climate. Now, how do we respond? Well, one way you respond is simply a policy level. What is the policy of the human community for dealing with people who have been displaced? And where does the focus need to be to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to survive what's coming around the corner? And I'm not talking war this time, I'm talking climate change. So we have those possibilities of bringing peace through climate change, responding to climate change, because it requires cooperation of people all over the world. Anything we can do, I fantasized, if you will, migration institute that we would set up that would have the job of identifying where the climate change impacts are likely to happen, what those impacts are likely to be, how we can mitigate the damage that's going to happen, and how we can maintain a sense of civilization while we move through this very difficult time of resource shortages and extreme weather events, all those things. How do we hold on to each other and hold on to a concept of civilization that allows everybody to thrive? So the Migration Mitigation Institute, that's what I called it, would be one way we could set up something like that and bring people together to create that kind of institute as part of our Peace Center. That's the kind of thing I was looking at in trying to prepare this paper. And in the goal of it is really to give some hope that we put our energy into doing the right things. What are our thoughts on what the world should look like as we move forward? And that in doing that, in putting our energy in a positive direction, we hopefully will reduce the tensions among the community on this issue of war and peace. And I do say, if you step back right now today, there has been a reduction in the amount of destruction that's going on. We had a huge, unfortunate massacre of many people and famines coming, all that kind of thing. And we need to be able to respond to those with some creative, at least creative policy suggestions. We may not have the political clout to implement everything we want to do, but I wanted to envision what might it look like in the future that we would do that would answer the problems that we're trying to face. I won't go through all of these. As I say, I'm going to send you out a revised one that has all the pieces in it. But I would just urge you to look at those and tell me what your thoughts are. How do you see the future world once we are past this conflagration that we seem to be moving through? How do we build a bridge to the future that these ideas, I'm hopeful that someone somewhere is going to read these ideas and go, oh, well, Mass Migration Institute, boy, do we need that. And take it from there and make it happen. I've had people contact me already who would like to see that happen. I've kind of held them off because it's not a kingdom project yet, but we need to discuss whether we want it to be a kingdom project, and if so, how we're going to go forward with it. Then I do also want to keep our eye on the kingdom ball, if you will. there are things that we can do like litigation. I have to talk this over with our legal team, but there's no question that when the kingdom was taken over, it was done illegally. And that has basically been admitted to by the United States in the apology resolution, that that's what was done. And the done by the Department of Justice of the United States government, where the question was raised, was the annexation of Hawaii legal? And the Department of Justice of the United States government could not find a constitutional basis for the annexation of Hawaii and said so in a report. So we have it in their own words that the annexation had no constitutional basis and was illegal. And I'd love to take that into a federal court setting if we think we can be successful. And that's a big if, because that's going to depend on the judge you get and the lawyers you get as to whether we can succeed in that endeavor. But it's certainly something to be explored and opened up as a future for the kingdom. I'm gonna stop there and hope that I've provided some inspirational thoughts that lead you to think up your own projects and send them to me. We'll make a collection of them, have it ready, flesh it out so that everybody has a chance to participate in shaping it and come up with a master plan for post-war Earth. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lenny. Ali Manaonui. Does anyone have any thoughts before we move on? He already, just one second, he's giving you folks your marching orders, if you will, to look at imagine the system, because now I'm asking all of you to start thinking like ministers now. Start thinking that way, because you are. And as we complete all the necessary matters such as contracts and funding, et cetera, all that will happen. Some things take a little longer, and that is the longest is bringing everybody together to be in the same mindset so that we all can have a debate on the things that we're talking about here today. And mass migration, global warming, and all these stuffs are very important, especially from war-torn countries that these people want to leave those countries and find a place where they can be creative. And you know, there's people around the world that have great ideas, better than mine. People are very intelligent, regardless of what nationality they are. There are very, very smart people throughout this world. And if anybody thinks that's not true, they're an idiot. So they are, and that is who the kingdom wants to invite, those smart, wonderful people that that have the courage to stand up against tyranny because they've lived it and they don't want that anymore. There's only a handful of bad people out there, I believe. There are more good people than are bad people. But unfortunately, the good people, they don't make themselves known because of whatever concerns or fears that they have. But imagine if they will stand up against that, someone else will stand up against that, then you have an army of people standing up for what is right. That's all it takes. Well, I'm that leader that will guide that tsunami going forward to make good things happen out of bad things. I refuse to believe that there are more bad people than good people. I don't believe that at all. There's people who are disenchanted. There are people who have had problems that they deal with. But when they look at their problems and someone else's problem, they'll realize their problems weren't as great as the other person looking at. What was that old saying about this fellow when fishing with another fellow? was complaining about life, complaining about everything was only complaining. And then he looked at the other guy and the other guy looked at him and says, I don't know what you complaining about. I don't have any feet. At least you have feet. You can run around and walk around. And you can do all that things. And found that his problem was a lot greater because he had no feet. But this guy was complaining about his shoes that was too big. Well, there's no shoes that none of us can, there are no shoes that we cannot fit in our quest for peace, in our quest to bring about the spirit of aloha. There is none. We can do it. There's no doubt in my mind. Thank you. I'm going to turn the time over to our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jessica Ash. She's ready for her presentation. It's all yours, Jessica, please.
Okay, Your Majesty, could you make me host so I can share? Oh, it looks like I can share a screen. So let's see if it will let me in the end. It's looking like it's going to let me.
Yep, I just put you on for host. Go ahead, you're there.
Okay, thank you. So today's conversation is about conflict de-escalation, mitigation, and resolution. And I just found out that a chapter I wrote called How Peace is Attainable in this book, Why Peace is Unattainable, it comes out next week. And I invited, just an hour ago, I invited Vincent Lin, the primary author, to the meeting, and His Majesty Vincent wanted me to tell you thank you for the invitation. He's in Portugal and unable to attend on such short notice, but he looks forward to meeting you soon.
Thank you.
So the agenda. The one, we're going to talk about the reality of anger, misunderstanding, and how that leads to fear and anger and conflict. Conflict management styles, passive, assertive, and aggressive nature, the 4 agreements, self-awareness, bias, cultural sensitivity, active listening, respond versus react, when you are angry, tips, and tips for when someone is angry with you, dealing with issues in general, apologies, and finally, feedback. It looks like a lot. We probably won't get through it all. Limitations. All topics have participant activities that take 30 or more minutes. It is a part of an entire course on the topic, and I've just extracted some pieces. Topics that are not covered are negotiation, which Dustin was talking about. It's an entire topic on its own, as well as mediation and facilitation are. Dealing with a despot, a Machiavellian, or a narcissist. Grief, and the generally negative person. Finally, the Ho'oponopono process is not included. However, I do have a published article on that I'll share with you all. So to start, anger is our first accessed emotion biologically. It is considered a secondary emotion, which means it's masking something else. So it takes awareness and reflection to say to yourself, I'm angry. I wonder if I'm afraid, or if I feel threatened, or if someone has disrespected me, or what it is. This source is the NIH. There are many sources about this topic. Due to the limitations of our Zoom, this will not be so interactive. If somebody else wants to monitor questions, Your Majesty wants to tell me somebody does have a question, feel free to interrupt. You can see in this picture that the person who received something in a restaurant received something that is apparently not what he ordered. And I've been out to dinner with my father when he was aged, and he couldn't understand the waitress. And he would get so fearful that she wouldn't bring what he wanted to bring that he would then get angry. It's a very mild case, but it hits at the nuts and bolts of how misunderstanding can create fear and anger, which leads to conflict. And so the reverse is, this is an image of me when I was at Miami University. I would take every semester about 50 Chinese students, and I would take them to a mosque and teach them how to wear this item of clothing and how to act during a Friday Juma. And the point of this is, if you increase understanding, then you reduce fear, anger, conflict, and you increase peace. This is a commonly known, I keep moving around everybody's pictures because I can't see everything, but this is a commonly known conflict management tool. The source is the Mayo, is you'll see it afterwards. So on any given issue, we tend to be either very assertive, meaning competitive, or not assertive at all, which means we avoid things. Or we can be very cooperative or not cooperative, and there's a test for this. That's not really a test, but it helps you understand where your own current conflict management style is, and knowing yourself can help you work through conflict. I can say from my own experience and from research, women tend to grow up very compliant. So it's very common for us to avoid or accommodate others at the exclusion of ourselves, which will also lead to our next slide. But neither avoiding nor accommodating is healthy all the time. And unless you're dealing with a despot or somebody who could possibly kill you, then accommodating them is probably your safest approach. But long term, it's not healthy. It may seem like compromise is awesome, but according to research, it doesn't give anybody exactly what they want. Each person is giving something up. And if anybody out there has ever been in a relationship, we know that we have to compromise. Our spouse wants to go out to dinner, but we want to go to a movie. And we do compromise. But it also is not a tool that should or can be used all the time. And you're probably going to realize quickly that being competitive is also not long-term healthy for relationships. It's one thing if you're competitive in your life and you're ambitious, that's great. But if you're always competing with your friends, then you're not going to, in the end, have friends. So pull back from whatever biggest tendency you may have is kind of the upshot from this. It is meant to be an activity, not just the test, but discussion. And to create a habit of paying attention to these things. So in the end, you probably guessed that collaborating is the best method of conflict management. However, that being said, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to get everybody's input and to get everybody to feel like they've been heard. So in an emergency situation, collaboration isn't really possible. And I'm sure Meg could go into that, but in an emergency situation, you need to follow orders by somebody who is going to get you to safety generally. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but okay. So the source here is the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument. This comes from the Mayo Clinic, and it has to do with how sociable you are. So again, if you're very sociable, then you will let someone else win and you may lose often, and you think that doesn't bother you. But in the end, it does. All of that passivity does build up inside of you, and it will come out as being passive aggressive. Another aspect of this is dominance. How dominant are you generally? What's your tendency? And it's similar to the competitive thing in conflict management in that if you're overly competitive and overly aggressive all the time and you win. But in the end, you won't win because you'll lose relationships. So learning how to be assertive, not passive or aggressive, is very helpful for every relationship in your life and your own soul. I mentioned briefly the 4 agreements because it relates to how we shouldn't take anything personally. Of course, now I've read this book so many times. You can get it for free on audio, and I listen to it in the car just to remind myself. It is a masterpiece of helping you attain some kind of inner peace with other people. And I don't always get along with my siblings. We disagree. And when I'm offended, I remember, don't take things personally. And I go for a long walk and remind myself that often. Do we need to take a break, Your Majesty?
No, we're fine.
Okay. So in this image, you see somebody isn't necessarily happy with whatever it is that's going on. And self-awareness goes a long way towards the creation of peace. If you are somewhat introverted or conversely extroverted, being aware of that is very helpful. So if you're not really sure, and I know that I'm right on the cusp of being introverted, but the answer to the question, where do you get your energy? If you recharge your batteries by being alone, then you're probably introverted. And think of every great rock star, Elton John, Taylor Swift, they're usually extroverted, and you can see them feeding energy-wise from the crowd. And this helps in every office setting. I had a girl run into my office the first day of work one day at 7 a.m. And she's like, "Oh, aren't you so excited? Aren't you so excited?" And I just looked at her. I said, can you just back up until I have my coffee? And so this awareness is helpful. Do you have a tendency to dominate? And can you back away from that tendency? The question, if you see smoke, do you see a fire, relates to your how much you rely on data. And neither method is wrong. If you do see smoke, but you see fire, you have a lot of intuition. And maybe actually there is no fire. So intuition is very helpful, but I have intuition and I know that I can jump to conclusions and that I need personally to stick closer to the data and not jump so fast. I have one of my dissertation chairs was very quantitative, and she would have never said that she sees fire. And she wanted me to have 7,000 pieces of data for my dissertation. There ensued a long argument between the people on my committee, and they finally said to the quantitative person, "Your reliance on data is awesome, but not everybody is a quantitative researcher. The point here is to balance your reliance on data." Some of the sources here are the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI. Some of you will say that the research has moved on from this and kind of debunked a lot of it. I respect that a lot. People still do talk about it. I really, the aspect of being introverted or extroverted or thinking or feeling really resonates with me. And I know Dr. Sinan Belhawi also likes this one. Herman Brain Dominance Instrument is the #1 personality test, so to speak, on the market these days. It's called the HBDI. Also, there is the Clifton Strengths. These are all research-based. There are others out there like the Enneagram, whose reliance on research isn't so deep. But all of these, and talking about all of these assessments helps us to be more aware of ourselves and others and how to work better with people and reduce conflict. This is an old comic, so to speak. So the girl in the bikini says everything is covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. And then the other female is saying nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. What this slide gets at is bias. There are many sources for what I'm about to talk about. And this brief summary does not include research biases. The first one is fundamental attribution error, where in yourself, you tend to forgive mistakes by saying it was the situation. But for others, if they make a mistake, we have a tendency to say that it's a character flaw or a personality mistake, and therefore it's not recoverable. Confirmation bias, implicit bias, which is unconscious. This slide image is an example of implicit or unconscious bias that is culturally and religiously based. Reactive devaluation, the halo horn effect, in-group, out-group. In higher ed, I'm considered in the out-group. Despite my education and abilities, for whatever reason, certain people, academics decided I'm not, because my peer-reviewed publications aren't in the best journals, then I'm the out group. And I personally think it's funny. Acquiescence, conformity, affinity, gender, and beauty. This is not all inclusive, but all of these we should be aware that, and if you ever get a doctoral degree, what you do in your dissertation is declare your bias. We want to say it's objective, but nothing we say is really objective. What we say carries an inherent bias based on many, many aspects of our background. And the best that we can do is to be aware of them and declare them up front. That previous image also hinted at cultural awareness. Hofstede is a renowned expert in the dimensions of culture. This can be its own entire course. And many people have gone on from Hofstede's 6 dimensions and created more research that delves deeper into them. We have power distance index in the United States. We have a low power distance index. We call each other by name, even if someone is our quote unquote boss, generally speaking. Other countries, you better call them by Dr. So-and-so or sir or ma'am, or you'll be in a lot of trouble. Individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance index, long-term versus short-term normative orientation. China has a very long-term normative orientation. And what shocks me is that the United States, having known that we have too short of a short-term normative orientation, we haven't changed it at all. And I find that shocking. Indulgence versus restraint. And I'm sure that you all could go into each one of these for hours. It's a very interesting read. Do we want to stop here for a second and I can take questions or comments? Okay, moving on. You can see that the gentleman on my right is looking attentively at the person who's speaking, and his gestures or paralinguistic features also demonstrate that, as does the blonde woman. They're all clearly actively listening to the speaker. Active listening is a skill that will improve every relationship you have, a professional and in your family. And the nuts and bolts of active listening are you're retraining your brain from listening to respond to listening to understand. After you start studying this and start paying attention to the very simple ideas, for example, at the top, we have the 5 whys. That's what it's called in business schools, in particular in sales training, but also management training. And you don't necessarily want to say, why, but the idea is that when someone says something, respond by saying, wow, can you tell me more about that? Or why did you think that happened? And you just keep drilling down and you'll get a lot of detail and you'll know the person so much better and understand them a lot better. I know that when I first started doing this 30 years ago, every relationship I had improved. So we can do a class on that as well. But for starters, if when someone speaks and you want to practice active listening, eventually you'll come up with your own phrases that feel right to you, but you can start by paraphrasing what they said. And you'll say, what I hear you saying is, if somebody's going through a very hard time, you can say, it sounds like you have a heavy weight on your shoulders. And I typed the paralinguistic features in case you wanted to see that phrase in writing. Hang on one second.
Jaden, what do you think? Jaden,
So
what do you think?
what we have here is the concept. I'm trying to cover up the video. Whoops, sorry. There we go. We have the ability not only to react to stimuli, and the dog is just wagging his tail because it's an instinct. But because humans have such big brains, we can take stimuli and let them rest on our brains and our hearts so that we can come up with a response so that we're proud of our own response, and so that we're not throwing telephones at people or plates at people, and that we say, hey, I'm just not okay with what you're doing. And there are books on this concept. It's also called being proactive, but being proactive also has other connotations beyond just this. So tips real quickly: when someone is angry with you, keep your tone calm. Acknowledge their feelings, which is not apologizing. Encourage them to tell you more. You're probably not going to say, Why? If someone's really angry with you, they're going to get mad if you say that specific word. But find more gentle ways to say, wow, I can hear this really upset you. I'm wondering why it's so deep, something like that. Recognize that they may not have taken a class in anger management and they can be very rude, but the calmer you can stay, at least externally, the better outcome you're going to have. If they say, leave me alone, do that. Let them walk away and come back to it. Don't force someone who says this to you. They need to walk away, and it's very important to let them. If possible, acknowledge your role in the situation. Explanation versus excuses gets to near the end of a conversation. If you're not telling somebody it's not my fault, but if they get to the point where they say, I just want to understand why you did this. Well, if the person who's angry says that, then you can get into this concept of explanation. When you're angry with someone else, again, purposefully keep your tone calm. If you yell and scream and become emotionally abusive, you lose. The person won't remember what the issue is, and they will tag everything with, oh, you were abusive that day. And the issue itself won't resolve. So by yelling and screaming, you're shooting yourself in the foot in terms of trying to get an issue addressed. Use I statements. We do not ever say, you need to. At a very core, primal level, humans will react completely negatively, and they will think, I don't need to do anything. So the next time you find yourself thinking you need to, stop and say, I need you to. Talk about a specific incident. We don't use always and never in this kind of conversation. And generally speaking, always and never are not correct. Internally, identify the primary underlying emotion that you are having, because anger is a secondary emotion. Are you afraid? Why are you afraid? Do you feel unloved, or do you feel disrespected? There was a famous series of books. I guess it was just a pair of books. One was called For Men Only, and it was about women's tendencies. It was research-based, and there are a lot of books that have come out through history on this topic. But the one For Men Only said, there's a high probability that if your girlfriend or wife or sister is upset, she's probably feeling unloved by whatever it is that happened. And conversely, the one that's For Women Only says that if your husband or brother or boyfriend is angry, there's a high probability that he feels disrespected. That can be a long debate that I'm open to. Breathe deeply and slowly to prevent anxiety attacks, and to also keep the blood flowing appropriately and oxygenating your brain so that you can think through this. If you're going to say something that you're going to later regret, especially to a loved one, then say, we'll come back to this when I'm calmer, and walk away. We've all lived with people who aren't as clean as we would like them to be. I use this lesson often with college students. In particular, Chinese students did not have siblings. And so they never had a sibling to irritate them. And they have zero skills by the age of 19 to work through this type of issue. So it's a very simple example to use to talk about dealing with an issue in general. And so housemate A cleans the public space, but the other housemate B doesn't. housemate A does have the right to a clean space, and they can say, I'm having a problem with the old pizza boxes, soda cans, and trash in the living room. When might you get around to throwing and putting stuff away? And B can or should say something like, hey, I have a final exam tomorrow afternoon. I understand this is a real concern of yours. Can I get to it in 2 days? But what I often saw at the university, often with police coming to the room, was, you need to clean this now. And then the other person just says, yeah, I'll get to it whenever. And these are just this is touching the surface of conflict resolution.
Well, Jessica, can I add a
Go
little?
ahead.
Your previous examples and going through the stages, I just want to point out that, like, back one even more, when you're talking about, sorry, I didn't mean to have to go back, but I just made this like 3 weeks ago. I walked in to pick up a check with a high-end customer. They came out on the offensive, just attacking, just crazy. And I was totally thrown off. You feel the adrenaline running. You're trying to figure out what's going on. You're taking deep breaths because you're trying to calm down. Everything you're laying out here exactly happened. I even tried to leave because I felt like I would get upset and say something I didn't want to. But I used the pause, identify, reflect, and then act. So I stepped back and asked them questions, tried to calm things down. I reflected on the best thing to do. For me, I'm not a small person. So in addition to the rest of the things that you pointed out, I actually have to try and make myself look small. This was a smaller woman that was doing this. She kept trying to get closer. I kept trying to back away. I had to actually lean up against the desk and try and get small and get tiny to not be like aggressive. And we ended up, getting to a resolution at the end, but I went through everything that you just pointed out in every step of it and was successful at the end. And if I hadn't done the things that you pointed out, there would have been yelling and jumping up and down and all kinds of fun stuff. So this is perfect and I totally love it. And thank you. This is good. Thanks, Jessica. Sorry if I shared too much. I just wanted to share.
I think that it is a discussion and it is practice. Like, I can sit here and talk all day long about how to remain calm, but the minute my sister calls me, I'm like, practicing it is where we get to the point. And there are a million rubrics, like you said, pause, identify, whatever, reflect.
Like that, yeah.
There are a million of them out there. But the key of that is that if you can acknowledge why they're angry, it's not apologizing. I can see you're really upset right now. And maybe you know why, or maybe you don't. But just saying that can de-escalate very quickly. So I appreciate your input, Rhett. Thanks.
Yeah. And it is not easy all the time, too. It's difficult when the adrenaline's rushing. So it's good to have this down before getting to that situation. Awesome. I'll let you keep
All of these skills take practice. Active listening. I don't know an 18-year-old that practices active listening. Everything is me. But once you start practicing it, every relationship improves. Okay, so we're done with this one.
Jessica,
Yes, Your Majesty.
you also should incorporate the fact that all people have bad days, regardless of anything. They can be the most intelligent. They want to do all the principles you're now talking about. But then you also need to recognize them as well. They must have had bad days. Some might have lost a loved one at work. Someone may have, we are human beings. And unfortunately, the anger management doesn't address cultural problems or issues someone's going through as well. But like for me, for an example, I'm a very emotional guy, can be, and I can get very upset very quickly, especially when I know I'm right. That's when I was younger and full of myself. But anyway, I'm a little older and a lot wiser. but your class, your session that you have, it hits a lot of areas that we all have gone through, and navigating through that and seeing it in writing is quite interesting. So I'm enjoying your session. Continue, please. I cannot hear you.
Sorry. And you bring up a very good point, which is empathy. And empathy is everywhere in this literature. There's a reason why somebody is mad. And if you love that person, or if they're in your life, it's in your best interest to figure out why, or try to figure out why if you can. And it may have nothing to do with the presenting cause. All right, so let me go back to the PowerPoint. It's almost over. But there are a million points of connection and conversation here. And I know Jude has his hand up, and Moog still has her hand up, but I'm not sure if that's from before. Okay, so apologies, some nuts and bolts. Anybody who knows me how much I love my dog. So don't say, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's a fake apology. And that will make the person even madder. Very similar to if someone's grieving and you tell them, I know exactly how you feel. That's immediately going to make them mad. So not sorry if I hurt your feelings. No ifs. And no, I'm sorry. This is my all-time favorite. But if you hadn't done X, then I wouldn't have abused you. It's a tale as old as time. Number one, validate their feelings. I understand how that could make you feel. 2, I'm sorry that I, or an implied I'm sorry for having done that. The passive tense is okay. And number 3, commit to change. And those are just nuts and bolts. And I'll get through this. In the future, I will, which is about committing to change. Feedback. There are many, many books on feedback, and this is not my best slide. But proactively, if you want to praise people in public, the best prevention for conflict in the workplace is to catch people doing what you want them to do, what you want to see in them, and say how awesome it is that you've seen it. Criticize somebody in private. And when you do that, first pick a right time and a right place to do that. But say something genuinely positive about the person, highlighting a strength. And then address a specific action to help them be more effective. And frame it as an opportunity for growth with I statements. Again, we're not going to say you need to. So an observation, I noticed that you were late again to our meeting. This opens up for someone to say, like His Majesty was saying, everybody has a bad day. What if his wife is going through chemo and he's late because he's taking her to her chemo? You don't know yet. You're just observing something. Again, avoid never and always. Encourage a dialogue, listen to their response, and let me know how I can support you in getting this project completed in the way you are usually so awesome at it. I found Dustin's conversation very timely because I created another slide that goes back to the idea of competition for resources. I think it's right here. So, and it's a hurdle that we have to overcome, in that the primary job of a species is to ensure the survival of our genetic material, which beyond procreation means we compete for resources. And that's at a very primal and instinctual level. it can become an us versus them. We need the food because my genes need to survive. So we get, and there's a lot of research that indicates this we is not defined from birth or nature, but rather from nurture. So since the concept of we, us, is learned, we can actually teach it. And that's all I have. I mean, it's the tip of an iceberg. Again, I have entire semester long courses on this topic, and practicing these things over time is what helps more than anything. Thank you, Your Majesty, for the floor, and I would love to hear comments and questions.
Well, I enjoyed your presentation. Conflicts will happen in everyone's life. How you deal with those conflicts. One, you can do it by saying, I respect myself enough to say no, or respect myself enough to say yes. Conflict means that can also be used as a healthy debate, to debate that. So you have to be aware of things that you're doing. Anger is never correct. People say there's called a righteous anger. I wish someone would tell me what that really means. But what is a righteous anger? I like to know what that really is. Do anybody know that answer? What is righteous anger?
I'll go ahead.
That's a cop out, isn't it? There's no righteous. Come on. That you cannot say that. It's conflicting in humanity itself. It is or it is not. You cannot be in the middle. As you read through some of verses in the Bible, it says itself. It's like saying, whoever throws a rock, throw a rock if you have not done that. I cannot be guilty of committing something that is not unrighteously and not be in contradiction with my own self. What you just said, Your Highness, just doesn't make sense to me and to the conflicts that I've seen.
So there is a righteous anger. You're saying that anger can be righteous or not?
No, there's not.
Okay.
I'm saying, no, there's no righteous anger. No.
Anybody, Michael Proper, is there such a thing as a righteous anger?
No, there's not. There is the money changers that Christ experienced and shown anger towards. And that's really the only one that I can think of.
Okay. Pastor Williams? You have something, is there such a thing as righteous anger?
Well, there is. I think it's something that can't be had by just the particular individual, but righteous anger in and of itself is anger, and it's biblical in definition, that's motivated and perceived by injustice and moral lapse. And what Mr. Proper said there about when Jesus went into the temple, the whole aspect behind his anger and destroying the tables and running the money changers out was strictly motivated by his love for God, his Father God, and what was the temple was about. I mean, after all, they had made the house of God, which was listed as a house of prayer, into a den of thieves. So the righteous anger behind that is that anything that really would go against what God had purposed and commanded of us. Rarely do you see that in humanity.
I agree. So it's like someone says, it is my truth. I'm speaking because it's my truth. It's my truth will prevail over everything else. As I said, my anger is justified because it's real. The point of the matter is that we all have anger. How we deal with that anger sets us apart. If you love someone enough, you can cool down your anger and step back and allow that person to vent or what have you. And sometimes it's hard to do. I know it's been hard for me as I move on through life because I see things and I would respond. Does it make me human? Well, that would be a cop-out. But what I'm simply saying is that there is justifiable anger. But anger doesn't necessarily mean revenge. It doesn't necessarily mean you speak ill or ugly or swear or all those things. It doesn't mean that. None of that is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there is a justifiable anger where you can calmly say, you're wrong. Or this is the reason why you're wrong. What you're saying is untrue. To defend your innocence, to defend who you are. That can be a justifiable measure of what you think you are. But Jessica's presentation is really good because it talks to the heart of who we are as human beings. And that's a good thing. Earlier, I had everybody talk, well, most of you talk about what's going on in the crises in the world. Does it mean that we have a justifiable concern about what's happening in the world, or and do we feel angry about what's happening in the world and why we can be what we can do or should do? Those are the reasons why we're having this discussion, because I welcome your justifiable discussion. And that anger that I'm thinking about is that if war does break out and North Korea does come true with the threat of destroying the Hawaiian Islands, that's a heavy thing to think about, isn't it? Do I feel justified in being angry? What do I do? How do I protect or save our people from this a potential threat that has been thrown around since 2018 against the Kingdom of Hawaii? And knowing that the Kingdom of Hawaii doesn't, the NATO countries don't recognize the kingdom being part of the United States because we're not protected by NATO. And that's a fact. So that in itself gives me the inalienable right to stand firm and to protect Hawaii and the people.
Yeah.
So is that a justifiable, well, I don't want to say anger because I don't have anger, but I do have a concern about what's happening. And all that we've talked about today lends to that possibility. And as we move forward.
That's right.
Alima Naunui, thank you for your presentation. And I would encourage all of you to respond to all that our Alima Naunui asked you to do. Bombard him with your thoughts. He'll love it. He'll keep him up all night long trying to figure it out. He loves to solve these things. But bombard him. Send him 1,000. Respond. He'll love it because your response, it helps us to bring together a great possible solution to the problem that we're all facing. We are a kingdom. There's no doubt. We are recognized by throughout the world, and I am the king. But it's not just that I'm the king. It's more so that I am a person that really value all of your opinions. I value what you say. I value it. I respect your opinions and your thoughts. And to me, all of you are leaders, and that's why you're here. And there's not one of you here that shouldn't be here. I love you all, and you're all doing extraordinarily well. Are there any closing comments from anybody today? Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara, you had your hands up.
I also would like to make a comment.
You're on mute, Barbara.
I'm sorry. No, somebody answered the question just as well, and so I passed on it. It's okay. Thank you, Your Majesty.
Uh,
Your Majesty, I would like to make a comment. I don't have to raise a hand here, so I would like to make a comment.
please, go ahead. Aloha.
Yes, aloha. How you doing, Your Highness? My comment is the following. When you started today's session, you indicated as to what is it about the Gaza Israel situation. But my comment is you were looking for a solution. And what I think it is that this is a global affair, really. However, a lot of people are making comments. They have no idea what's going on in reality. I speak with a lot of Israelites and Palestinian friends that I have that live there in the area. And what is really going on is that something that possibly my concern is that this could get worse if the proper people do not become involved in the influence that you have. Iran, as Iraq and Israel and the Palestinians must get together, because here the problem is not itself, is not a religious problem. What it is a problem that deals with Hamas killing people, because both sides are killing people. And even soldiers are not, Israelite soldiers are not in favor of the war and are saying, why are we killing people when these young kids are senior citizens and other people that have nothing to do with this problem are being killed on both sides of the fence? So something that could be possibly a solution that I could think of, it would be the people, the stakeholders, the real stakeholders involved that know the problem, become involved in negotiating this process, because we're talking about human rights here on both sides. So trying to have meetings with those people involved, the real stakeholders, not other people or not other nations that they do it possibly for some interest, economic interest. But is there really economic interest here? I don't know, because we don't know what is the real problem, why Hamas is doing what they're doing, and vice versa, why is Israel like killing those people? It will be the leaders. So that's where you could become involved with them, like, among those people. Get the other ones, get the Russians out, get us out, and see what is the real issue is, because we always think we know the problem, and that's not what anybody in here said. It's not the problem. I know, because I speak with them constantly. That's my comment on that. It should be something that you could do, because you are, in many places, people know you and they respect you. So there's where possibly you could have some leeway to create that negotiation, because this could turn very quickly into a very serious global problem.
Numbers appear to be at record.
I agree with what you said. And that brings back to my question again. Lemieux, is Israel justified in their anger?
No, no, it's not.
Anybody
They're
else
not.
can weigh in on that? Is Israel justified? Is Hamas, is anyone justified there in their anger? Yes, Jessica?
So there's the idea that we don't control our emotions, but we control how we act on our emotions. And so are they justified in their anger? Yes, but their actions are not representative of moving towards peace.
Lenny, you have some thought on that?
Well, there have been phases of things, that just as one example from the current situation, you had Hamas attack Israel. Israel responded and attacked Hamas. But Israel seems to have gone beyond the norm for international law in how they responded. So it has to be a balancing going on here between what is justifiable and what is not justifiable. And it requires some nuanced solutions to the problem. It's not necessarily A is right and B is wrong. And particularly in the Middle East, where we have a history of generations of conflict going on that have just come up again in this form of what we're dealing with now. So, and I don't think it's our job. Remember, we are a non-aligned nation. It is not our job to pick sides here. It's our job to try and find a way to contribute towards peace. And that's not an easy pathway to find at the moment. I do note that to some extent, there's a ceasefire now. Not that there isn't still violence going on, but it's not the kind of violence that we were seeing earlier. So maybe in this period of somewhat calm, cooler heads can prevail. I don't think anybody really wants a major war. I think that Iran would love to find an off-ramp to not have to fulfill its threat to attack Israel again. Somebody's got to stop. Somebody has to stop before it ever stops. Otherwise, you're into this spiral that just gets worse and worse. So those are my things.
Thank you, everyone. I have taken quite a bit of notes today because today's meeting is probably one of the most important. Not that we don't, all our meetings are important, but today is more important because as I draft a letter that I will be that will go out to the UN and many other people on the kingdom's position as a non-aligned nation, and what we consider to be important to us as a people, and that thought as a people carries a lot of weight because it's not just my words; it's we, the people, speaking. But it would be so nice, be perfect in a perfect world, that the bad guy and the other guy says, well, let's go have a fight then. If you want to fight, then just then fight it out and see what happens in a perfect world. But it's not like that. They want to, it's not like that. And it'd be wonderful if they could see the chaos and mayhem problems that they have created. But thank you all of you. Thank you, Lanny. Thank you, Jessica, for your input and all of your thoughts. Are there any comments before we say a prayer? And Pastor Williams, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I would like you, after we're done, I would like you to give us our closing prayer, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anybody would like to weigh in before we got another 10 minutes or so? Anybody would like to weigh in? Oh, the princess is. Aloha. Go ahead.
Hi. So I was thinking, I hope that everybody goes to the kingdomofhawaii.org. It's very easy to navigate. I just did it yesterday. So if you're curious about what's going on, it's very updated. So if you ever have a chance to please take some time to look at that. I really think it's a very amazing site, and I think you're going to have some amazing things that you probably never knew were there. Another thought I had was, I was thinking about what Lanny was saying about climate change, and my thoughts went to in the beginning when the world was created. You know, the world that the world was supposed to, the creation was to multiply and replenish the birds, the ocean, the fishes, the trees, the insects, all of that, and the sun and the moon. When I think about that every night, when I look outside and I see that the world is still obedient to God. The sun and the sun sets and rises every day. The stars appear in the skies. The giraffes are producing all that. You look at nature and of itself is naturally still obedient to God. The only ones that are not obedient to God is man. Man is not obedient. Then henceforth, the world is what it is. So when you look at the natural part of the creation of God, and you look at the world from our perspective, the Aina is always going to take care of itself. You know, it's we are the ones that destroys it. Another thought that I had also was, you know, we know that we've seen mighty miracles. We all talked about this the last conference when my brother was, you guys were all talking about the miracles of what's happening in the world and him being the king, and you guys all paid homage to him. I thought that was great. I think that we cannot change evil and corrupted people. We cannot change them. We can only change us. And by doing so, I think we can call upon our Father in heaven to have mighty miracles, mighty changes, because that's where it begins. It begins with us on our knees, asking him to bless this world, bless the Hawaiian culture, bless Hawaiian people, bless my brothers, bless us all, because our intent is not evil. Our intent is good, that we want to do good things for one another and for those around us. So look at the world in the creation, look at the world as Lanny was talking about, look at all the things, and there's no need to be angry, like Jessica talked about, when we can control ourselves first, and then maybe reach out and help others along the way. I thought about that. I hope that you guys kind of go to the site. I think you're gonna find it very enlightening to you. Thank you.
You know, my sister said something very profound, is that we can only control ourselves, nobody else. And we can influence people who want to be influenced in a right way. And that's power, to be able to, Lao Tzu said, to thyself, not Lao Tzu, but Shakespeare said, to thyself be true. Be true to yourself, you'll never fail. And that's aloha, Kay, how are you?
You muted, Kay.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, you said, aloha, everyone.
Kay is our webmaster here. She's been updating our Kingdom website and what have you. And she's also a media person. She knows everything about media and whatnot. And if you folks have any thoughts, Kay welcomes your thoughts, because we want to make sure that everything that we're doing is updated and it's good. It's honest. We're not about propaganda. We're about sending messages out there that are factual, what we're doing, and keeping the world apprised. I think on the site there's a button there where people can register themselves. We want to make sure that that's properly activated, so people can go on and just register themselves and their family, and so we can get a consensus as to those who are pro-kingdom reclamation and moving forward with that. It's very, very important. And but thank you. The site is looking good. Thank you. Yes, Michael.
I'd like to share a couple things in addition.
Please.
Let's see here. When we look at the world, there's a lot of different environments and bioregions. And I think if we're talking about the individual being able to have choice, because really when we talk about peace, it comes down to the individual. And we may feel like we as individuals don't have any kind of impact there, but the way that the centralized systems are able to win is by dividing us as cultures, as by regions, as by language. And I think when we really understand the power of the Pacific and how small the world is, but how large the Pacific is, and what the Kingdom of Hawaii really represents. You know, this is half of the earth, and it's almost the whole half of the earth. And when it comes together in unity, the voice that you have the opportunity to bring to the world, Your Highness, is very impactful and important, not just because of the region or the bloodlines or what's happened historically, or even the power of standing up and the restoration that you're leading, but how we can actually lead. Like you're talking about a website and a system. You know, when we look at the books and the indexes that the Hawaiian Kingdom had well before it was taken and annexed, I believe that this document here is something that can actually tie those and just review it. I know that you have historically, but maybe as you create this new document, you know, we've touched on
Yes.
virtues and values. I think that there's a lot that could bring here. And what this really ties on is how the secret combination centralisms that govern humanity and control humanity. And I believe that the Hawaiian Kingdom, and specifically the Kingdom of Hawaii, has the opportunity to be able to lead the whole world, primarily because not just where it's geographically located, but because of the heart of the people and how the rest of the world recognizes it. I mean, we don't have to look forward and worry about the threat of North Korea attacking the Hawaiian Islands. We just have to look back at the Second World War. It's already happened. And I really just believe that looking forward within ecosystems such as the kingdom and many other areas and cultures that can use digital technologies to be able to bring it, just like you're talking about the website and people signing up, you know, how we can bring other regions and other cultures, whether they're cultures of indigenous roots that recognize different clans, like, you know, the Hawaiian people are looked at as the water clan, and they have massive other indigenous communities that really recognize them in a massive way. And this opportunity will actually leapfrog over systems that will actually roll out in the Americas. And so as we talk about the website and we talk about the abilities to be able to bring unity, I think it's important to look at some of these other elements and weave them in, because really the Hawaiian Kingdom has the opportunity, or the Kingdom of Hawaii has the opportunity to be able to bring this to humanity now.
I agree. Kay, I'd like you to coordinate yourself with Michael Proper, please, so we can incorporate all this digitally and whatnot to update stuff. So I'll send the contact information so both of you can get together on this. Okay? Would that be okay with you, Kay? Michael, would it be okay with you?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's not a problem.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation today. Oh, aloha, Amy. There you are.
Aloha. Hello, Your Majesty. I was wondering if I'm pulling up the website and I'm seeing 4 beautiful pages, but I don't see the rest of it. I was wondering if Kay had a minute to show us the actual website to make sure I'm in the right place and how to register. Is that okay?
You're actually in the correct place if you're on the kingdomofhawaii.org.
Yes.
Right now, there are a lot of updates and corrections being made. So if you don't see anything where you don't have access yet, it's because we want to make sure that what's going out to the public is proper. And, you know, we don't have, anyone coming back trying to understand, okay, why isn't this working? So if you don't see anything at the moment, it's because it's being properly, we're doing the proper updates.
Okay, so there's 2 websites. There's thekingdomofhawaii.org and there's kingdomofhawaii.org. That one shows under construction, but thekingdomofhawaii.org shows a description and 4 beautiful intro pages, but no other text. Which one is the right one?
Let me see. It should be kingdomofhawaii.org.
No, there's a the in front of it. It's thekingdomofhawaii.org.
Yes, I'm sorry. Correct. Yes.
And I saw the buttons yesterday, but they're not there now. So that must have to do with the updates.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. So
What is the correct one? Because I'm trying to get in and none of them work. They're all yes.
Kingdomofhawaii.org.
Chat.
The kingdomofhawaii.org.
Yes.
There is other.
Well, I will think that I've 2 things. The kingdomhawaii.org didn't work. Kingdom Hawaii did. So we go to Kingdom Hawaii, go down to it, and just click on .org and everything comes up. So if you just go Kingdom Hawaii for now until she gets it all correct, you'll get to our Kingdom website. So it is officially thekingdomhawaii.org. However, I have found difficulty. I was going to call you on that, but since we're on the subject matter, Kay, if you go to Kingdom of Hawaii it'll come up, all the stuff come up.
Yes,
Click on you can click on the .org, it will happen. So, we will get that all up and down and get it all, situated correctly. Kay is working 24 hours a day, maybe not that much, but she's working hard on get it all done. Okay, I'll send you the information to Michael, and so for you folks to collaborate and whatnot.
The system,
Can they make the lettering a little bit bigger? It's too small.
Okay, did you hear him?
Oh, are you viewing from your laptop or your phone?
Laptop.
Okay, I will go through and see if I can make the adjustment on the laptop, because when you view from different devices, they'll show in different sizes. So now if you're viewing from your phone, if you turn your phone into landscape mode, you're able to see everything closer. And then of course by pinching as well.
No.
So,
it's
but that's for your
laptop.
phone. I got
Okay.
you. I'll go through and I'll
Thank
make
you.
those adjustments. You're welcome.
Thank
I'm
you.
on my
Thank you.
computer. It looks beautiful. Nice.
Yeah, I think the types is huge.
Oh,
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think it's good. I'm easy to please anyway. So I'm not a difficult person to please. We have a bigger challenge facing us. I have received emails from many different sources that security sources and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there are countries that are asking our input to bring about a dialogue for peace. Unfortunately, these countries do not trust the current people who are talking about peace, but still selling weapons of mass destruction to destroy one another. I myself am glad that we've had the discussion, because it allows me to think in how to draft my letters and before it goes out into the world. Amy, did Kay answer your question?
Yes, she did. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions before we close our meeting?
I would like
Thank
to,
you.
Your Majesty, Mayor?
Yes?
I just wanted to assure you that the website is fully accessible with a screen reader, and it has been since the first time I looked at it a couple of months ago. So I'm aware that it's not something that many webmasters or developers actively think about, but whether it was actively thought about or not, all elements are fully accessible, and all the treaties are all the PDFs are presented in a very accessible format. So I just wanted to say thank you for that on behalf of everyone who might want to know more about the kingdom. So thank you.
You're welcome. Michael, you had something to say?
I'll just work with Your Highness and Kay on understanding the depth and systems that are already capable and fully functional. Like you can download with any phone the Hawaiian Life app, and you can log in without username and password through a scan, which is the most secure login humanity has today. And you can literally register vehicles, you can get certificates, you can get registrations, you can get permits, all related to the kingdom. And, you know, this has 15 years of development and almost $30 million behind it. And it's been built for you. And I'll work with Kay and others to review the details and depth of it. And then maybe we could provide some training and guidance to this body in the future.
Thank you. Pastor, would you please give us closing prayer?
Sure. Let's pray together. Father, I just want to thank you and praise you for your grace and your goodness and mercy to us. And Lord, I thank you too, that as we listened to the discussions and the teaching of what is necessary for us both as humans, Father, we don't want to get far away from what you've told us to do as well. Lord, we live in a world that's pretty chaotic right now, but you've made it very clear that you go with us and that you will be with us, and that we can not be living in fear, but rather be peaceful and not have fear and not dismayed. And Lord, I just ask in simplicity that you strengthen and encourage each one, that you give direction and give clarity of heart and mind. And Father, the peace that's being spoke about, the anger teaching that was spoken about, you've already taught as well. And Lord, that we would take these things that we learned today and not just listen, but rather, Father, that we begin to further what we know and apply these into our lives, that we might be better ambassadors for the Lord Jesus Christ. And Lord, I'm praying too for protection of Hawaii and the efforts of the kingdom. I pray for each one involved, Lord, that you provide all that's necessary. That, Lord, what I believe that you are setting up on this earth until you come back is an opportunity for the world to experience what peace really is through you. So, Father, as we leave today, our prayer is that, as Jesus said in John, that peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you, not as the world gives, but rather as I have. And do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful. So, Father, I pray that. I pray a blessing upon His Royal Majesty today as well, that, Lord, that you protect him and the cabinet as they move forward in the things that you've purposed. And we will forever praise you. With this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, everyone. And what a great